Hi, I'm Norm Stockton. I'm here with the Gallien-Krueger MB Fusion 800. Amazing, amazing amp. Smallest and most powerful in its class. All tube preamp. There's three 12AX7s in this thing, 800 watts of power. It all weighs in at about 5.5 pounds, and you can throw it into your gig bag. It's pretty stinking amazing. Let me walk you through just an overview of the front and rear panels, and then we'll walk through each individual knob, and you can kind of hear what's going on. By the way, you already know, but computer speakers rather don't do a very good job of reproducing bass frequencies. So definitely plug in some headphones or some speakers so you can really hear what's going on, okay? Here we go. Starting on the left-hand side of the front panel, you've got your input jack, you've got your 10 dB pad, and a mute switch, foot switchable between gain A and gain B, which is a function that rocks, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. You have the contour, which is a bit of tone shaping. You have your 4-band EQ, although it's more than that as well. We'll talk about that in a second. And then you also have control over the level of gain B overall. So in this case here, I'm using gain B as kind of my dirtier setting. It's hitting the tubes a little harder and more saturation. But you can make it where the relative level between gain A and gain B is the way you want it, whether you want gain B to be much hotter or the same level, whatever. You have your master volume level there. On the rear panel, you have the famous GK-DI, sounds great, with a switchable between pre and post EQ in terms of what you want to send the front of house. You have the foot switch. There's a tuner out, which works in conjunction with that mute switch on the front. We'll talk about that in a second. Effects, send and receive, and then you have a headphone jack that's switchable to be a line out / chain out jack, which is awesome. So anyway, why don't we go ahead and just sort of start on the left side of the front panel. You've got your input jack, obviously. You have your 10 dB pad, so if you have a really high output bass or you're doing some sort of ridiculous slap stuff where your dynamic range is crazy, and it'll let you know because that white indicator, the LED around that switch will turn red. But in this case here, I have the 10 dB engaged because I have a mic'd cabinet. I'm miking GK Neo 112 cabinet to help with this, but I need to keep the level of that down. So I've got my master level and my 10 dB all activated to kind of keep the output level down. But you don't need to do this unless you're clipping, okay? With the mute, by the way, it's really cool. It looks cool to have the lit up knobs, right? But when you think about the practical aspect of that, it's pretty awesome because how often have you been on a dark stage, you can't see anything? With this setup here, I mean, if I have the mute engaged and that red button's on, you could be halfway across the room and see that you've got the mute engaged, so it's really, really cool. And it also helps because some of the knobs here are multifunction. If you push it in, you'll get control over a different function. We'll talk about that in a second. But in the case of the mute switch here, the tuner out is active regardless of this setting. So it's pretty cool because you can hit mute and unplug and not have a thunderous click going through the front of house or your cab, for instance. But you could also tune up between tunes. Moving on, you've got your foot switchable. By the way, the foot switch is provided with the amp. You have foot switchability between gain A and B. So there's a variety of ways that you can approach this. For me personally, I tend to have gain A be sort of my clean setting and my main setting, and then gain B is more of the sort of saturated. I'm hitting the tubes a little harder and getting a little bit more saturation in the tone. So in that case here, listening to gain A, and then gain B. A little bit more crunch, right? That's entirely a function of how high you turn these up. Obviously, my gain B, you can see, I've got that quite a bit hotter. Now, if I wanted to make it the same as gain A in terms of the tone, now you see it got quieter, and that has to do with that level B knob back there, and we'll talk about that in a second. But for now, I'm going to keep gain B as that sort of crunchy, saturated setting, because I dig it. Okay, moving on. The contour control is basically a bit of a smiley face EQ. So it boosts the lows and the highs a little bit and dips the mids. And speaking of those push functions, you know, you can have it toggle back and forth between 500 and 800. So it's entirely a matter of the bass you're playing, the tone you're after, the technique you're using, and your personal preference in terms of what you're wanting to hear. But check it out. When it's flat, you're basically not doing anything. Gives it that scooped out thing, right? And obviously this is an extreme setting, it's all the way up. So it's doing the maximum dip right now. That'll change the mid setting. I tend to kind of keep it, especially for fingerstyle stuff. I kind of tend to leave it off, but you know, sometimes you may want that setting. With the treble, it's a push function knob as well, and you can obviously bring up your trebles, your trebles, bring up your highs, or bring them down. In addition, this push function will increase the frequency of that pot to more like 10K, so it ends up being a little bit more of a sparkly kind of sound. So, you know. So if you want that kind of thing going, you know, it's a very, very versatile. Your high mids. I tend to run these a little bit lower, like around 9 o'clock. Low mids. Really thickens it up. I tend to run those about flat. And then bass. Really thin it out. And this has a push function where you can get into the sub frequencies. I'm going to be blowing up my my input stages here. So then getting back to gain A and B, check it out. So I've got, when I activate gain B settings, it activates that knob there. So this is basically what allows you to level, set your relative levels between gain A and gain B. So if you set your B to be the same tone but just louder, then you know, you would basically bring this down to about the same as gain A and then bring this up. Again, I usually have my gain B hotter and have it about the same output level. And then your master output level. It's a very powerful control because what it allows you to do is control the overall loudness of the amp, if you will, while maintaining any ratios you set between the gain A and B settings. Very cool. You'll notice that I set my level way down because I'm trying not to blow out this room, but 800 watts. The only other feature I wanted to talk about again real quick is that headphone / line out, chain out jack on the back. Super, super convenient stuff because on the one hand, it's a great headphone amp. You know, you don't have to blow out your neighbors at 1 in the morning. But in addition, although that's fun, but in addition, you can hit the switch and it becomes a line out / chain out, which will allow you to plug this into any of GK's MVP powered extension cabinets. This is certainly not lacking any power, but the entire 800 watts could be allocated to whatever cabs this is plugged into. and the MBP would have its own power, and so you could really have some amazing headroom. But everything is still controlled with the front panel of the MB Fusion. So very, very cool stuff. However, I always encourage people to check this out on their own. Don't take my word for it. Go to a GK dealer, and there's also more information if you go to Gallien.com. But in terms of tone and headroom, features, portability, value, I don't think you can touch it. This is an amazing amp. It's the Gallien-Krueger MB Fusion 800. Go check it out. I'm Norm Stockton. God bless you. I hope to see you on the road.